All right, Bailey, you've got these people coming in? I got them. All right, let me share my screen. Welcome everybody once again to the WEAC membership meeting. We're going to do updates on the federal policy. Oh, what happened there? Oh, stop sharing. Okay, why is this not doing what it needs to do? Okay. All right. Okay, let me try it again. Okay, here we go. Vicente or Emily, can you do this, please?
Asante wa.
I can do it.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, everyone. Si hablan español, so I'll say it in English first. This is for interpretation for the Spanish speakers. So, si hablan español y quieren interpretación, por favor, topen el globo abajo donde están los iconos y luego le van a poner la voz de Vicente, que le va trazar y todo. Gracias. Thank you.
Okay, the next slide. We've done that. Everyone's got the name in the chat. Say welcome. Next slide. Someone can read this.
WEAC's mission. Since 1988, we have worked to build healthy communities by ensuring that people of color and or low income participate meaningfully in the creation of sound and fair environmental health and protection policies and practices. Next slide, thank you.
It's freezing. All right, make sure we understand that we have a view. There's a speaker view, there's a multi-view. It's probably best as we do this presentation that you go to a speaker view. Make sure you put your phones on mute. If you're on your phone, you put a *6. And if you're on your phone, you want to start and stop your video, it's *9. If you have a computer or a tablet, down below, you'll see a couple icons with the microphone and also with the video, okay? Someone help me with this.
Community agreements, be present and participate. Remember, there's only one microphone. Speak from the I perspective. Move up, move back. Land your plane. Respect others' point of view. And remember, this is a judgment-free zone for everybody. Next slide.
Russell? Introduction agenda.
Agenda, introduction to WEAC for environmental.
Okay, I'm on. Can you hear me?
Yes, we got you.
I'm sorry. I'm in. Sorry. Today's agenda, introduction to WEAC for environmental justice. Then we'll also hear from State Senator Chuck Schumer, joins us at WEAC. And then we'll hear from the Planning Committee overview and presentation. And WEAC 2022 federal policy update, along with Congress, Adriano Esbiat joins us also. And then we'll have some closing words. Thank you. Next slide.
Okay, you are?
Hello,
Hi.
Yes, you are.
can you hear me or see me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you fine. Can you hear us and see
me?
us? Yes, sir, we can see you. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. I can't
Perfect.
see you or anything. This box keeps fading in and out here. So I
Okay.
just get a big white thing that says launch meeting, but if you can see me, who's the tech on my side?
I am. And I got you. You're pinned.
Here we go.
All right.
But I just see a picture of me. Oh, there I am. Okay, good.
There you are.
All right. That's
Okay.
how I look, for better or for worse.
Oh, you know what? That's fine with us. And we thank you so much for being here this morning. I'm going to give a brief biography before we just jump in, and just telling everyone about your many accomplishments over your years in Congress. U.S. Senator Charles, as we all know him, Chuck Schumer, has built a reputation for being a tireless fighter for New York. He is known for visiting all 62 counties every year to talk to every constituent, a tradition which he holds today. Born in Brooklyn, New York, Senator Schumer was elected to the U.S. Senate in 1998. During his time in Congress, Senator Schumer has secured a seat on the Senate and Finance Committee and elected by his colleagues to serve as the leader of the Democratic caucus. And these are only just a few of his many, many accomplishments. Senator Schumer is also a visible advocate for environmental justice, demanding crucial climate action. He has advocated alongside WEAC's executive director, Peggy Shepard, to announce the Clean Transit for American plan that would provide funds for the MTA to purchase all electric buses for its fleet. Senator Schumer, we welcome you here today.
Thank you, Yua. Thank you for that great introduction. And more important, I want to thank WEAC. You are a pioneer. You know, every bill we do now that deals with infrastructure or building or anything else, environmental justice is at the top of our list. And without the long, hard work that WEAC has done, that wouldn't have happened. So I thank all of you, and a particular shout out. I don't know if Peggy is on the Zoom, but a particular shout out to Peggy, who is just one invaluable, precious resource to New York and to America and to the globe, given environmental problems and given the fact that communities of color have often had to pay the price. First, just, I know your area. Some of you may know I'm a bicycle rider. I used to play basketball, but when you're about 50 and your brain says jump and your body stays on the ground, just stop playing ball. And so I ride my bicycle all over the city. I'm not a spandex guy, but one of my favorite rides has been for 20 years. I don't go 40 miles an hour, no spandex. Is up the West Side to go over the George Washington Bridge from my house in Brooklyn. And I saw the progress that you have made. I can now ride my bike on a beautiful bike path all the way up. 10 years ago, I had a ride on a street. I saw what you did when they wanted to dump another sewage plant in North Manhattan. At least you have that beautiful park, which I've ridden my bike through and seen people playing with. And, just one other point here and why I'm so passionate about environment and environmental justice. So I have a grandson and I was riding my bike. One of my favorite rides, sorry, it's not in Manhattan, is one of my favorite rides, but there's another one around the South Shore of Brooklyn. We have beautiful wetlands all along the South Shore where the Atlantic Ocean laps up against the Brooklyn shore. And I love it. It's one of my favorite rides. And after my grandson was born, I was doing the ride about 2 weeks later, and it hit me. He may never see this, because if we don't do something about climate change and the oceans rise 2-3 inches, this area is all gone, all gone. So anyway, I'm passionate. So let me go over some of the things that have just happened. I'll speak for about 5-10 minutes on some of the things we've done, some of the things we're trying to do, and then open it up to some questions. Is that okay, Yua?
Sure, that's fine. We have questions.
Okay,
And
we'll get to them.
yeah.
I just have to leave by 10:30 because I'm going to the swearing in of
Yes, sir.
Velasquez up in the Bronx, and I'm still
Yes.
in Brooklyn here. Okay.
Perfect.
So last night, as you know, we passed the big omnibus funding bill, and it had a lot of good, exciting environmental justice and climate priorities. 100 million more for environmental justice grants in the EPA, $2.7 billion for clean water and drinking water revolving fund, 1.23 for EPA's Superfund program, which is going to allow them to go after the polluters much better than they have before because Trump starved them for money. $178 million for non-point source pollution, $900 million for the LWCF, the Land and Water Conservation Fund. More money to take the lead out and lead out of pipes, lead out of schools. You know, a lot of the pipes in schools have lead poisoning our kids' minds. 43 million for sewage overflows and 46 million for grants, brownfield grants. But that's on top of the BIF, which had much more money. Listen to this, the BIF bill, which we insisted that has really good environmental justice things in it, has 55 billion for clean water and clean drinking water, including 15 billion to deal with lead service lines. I had a little press conference, I think you were that represented there, WEACT was there, saying we need to get the lead pipes out of New York City, what it does. 65 billion for broadband internet. And this, what we said is, you know, everyone said, well, rural areas need it. Yeah, they do. But so do inner city areas, not because they can't get to the last mile, but because people can't afford it. I tell a story. I met a lady in central Brooklyn, June, and she was so happy. She said, my son is starting first grade. She was a hospital worker. She didn't make that much money. And she said, I'm so happy I was able to afford a computer. My son's starting first grade, and he'll be able to really fully involve himself. I saw in September, how's your son doing? Terrible. Why? Well, I lost my job, and I can't afford the $70 a month to pay for broadband. This would. Over 15 billion of this 65 billion goes to inner city poor people to pay for broadband. We put another 3.5 billion for the EPA Superfund, 2 billion for brownfields, 3.5 billion for weatherization assistance. This was, I was passionate with. I know you believe in mass transit, and I do. There was we got 11 billion for mass transit in this. We got over 15. I'll get to what that'll do, and $1 billion for reconnecting communities. As we all know, not only with your sewage plant, but when they built things, Robert Moses and all these others, they picked the poorest communities, communities of color, communities least able to defend themselves. So one of the things we're already using some of this for is to redo the Cross Bronx Expressway, which is near you. Maybe some of you use it sometimes. Okay, and we'll do it for other things. So the lead pipe thing is really important, and I want to thank your activism for that. You were there, as I mentioned, in Lower Manhattan, and we secured money to replace our lead service lines. Lead is a scourge. It does damage to the brain's nervous system of our children. Then they're irreversible. Then we blame them when it's our fault, when it's the country's fault for never replacing these lead pipes, because we've known for 40, 50 years how bad lead is. And our kids are our most precious resource. So what you did in New York State is good, great, in terms of getting the lead out. And now we'll move to get the BIL money. And as majority leader, I make sure a lot of this money goes to New York. So I'll work with you to make sure that a lot of that money comes here, and we work together on getting the lead out. But as you know, we've got a lot more to do. We're still fighting to get the BBB done. That is not over. It's an uphill fight. You saw what Manchin did with the president, but there are a lot of more things, a lot more priorities. We want to get additional funding for port pollution reductions, more environmental and climate justice block grants, a clean energy sustainability accelerator. That's really important. We want to reinstate the Superfund tax, make the polluters pay. I'm passionate about that. We want to have consumer incentives for efficient, clean appliances, more funding to replace lead, as we talked about, the creation of a CCC, a Civilian Conservation Corps, which I know you're behind. 40% of those kids would get good jobs, have to be people of color. And I push that. It wouldn't be in there, the 30 billion that was originally in, and we're still fighting to keep it in for everybody. Robust assistance for NEPA. So another issue is coastline resilience, coastal resilience. We got 492 million in the infrastructure bill, and in the new bill we just passed, we added another 34 million. So the bottom line is these are great investments. I want to engage with you to ensure a resilient future for Upper Manhattan coastline, but also one that allows Harlem residents to relax, play, and enjoy the waterfront. What you did with the park, but 10 times over. You know, there's a beautiful waterfront and the people ought to be using it and having it. And that's true throughout New York City. We got to do that. We also got money for Long Island Sound. EPA's over $100 million to clean up that, and tons of transit money, more transit money than we've ever had. So there will be money. I know you're going to hear from Adriano Espaillat later. He and I are brothers working on getting the money for the 2nd Avenue subway. We just got the Federal Transportation Administration to approve level 2, which is the engineering phase. Once you get that, you usually almost always get the money. And there's plenty of money in what's called the SIG program to spend the $2 billion to build it. I think the 2nd Avenue, you know, it's a transit desert. Our poor people are always discriminated against. And another thing I did is I linked up the MTA with this is not your district, but it goes near it. It helped the East Bronx, which is another transit desert, to link Co-op City, Morris Park, Hunts Point, Parkchester with the transit system, so people could get down to and get questions to work. So there's a lot we've done and a lot more we got to do. I will use my clout to help you achieve your goals. And I always say, you guys are on the outside pushing. I'm on the inside taking that progressive push and changing it into action. So I look forward to a continued good relationship, Ewa.
Thank you. And we thank you so much for your tireless efforts. And we just have a few questions that we would like to ask. And recognizing that you do have to go at around 10:30, so I'll do my best. So we know that energy costs are the 2nd highest expense for residents of New York. Among the many consequences of the Russian invasion of Ukraine is rising energy costs in the US and plans to build out more liquefied natural gas exports, which will prolong our reliance on fossil fuels. What are some of the actions that Congress is taking to protect consumers from energy price gouging and communities from fossil fuel expansion?
Great. Okay, so that's a great question, and we're thinking about it just as you are. And we don't want, you know, some of the Republicans and say, oh, pump more oil. That's not the answer, okay? So here is what we are planning to do, because we don't want poorer people to pay the price. But there's gouging going on by the oil companies. They're making record profits. The cost of extracting oil isn't greater, so why is the price going up so much? Gouging. So A, we're having Lena Khan, our new progressive head of the FTC, look into gouging with them. But second, listen to what we'd like to propose. You know what a lot of the oil companies do with their profits? They put them into stock buybacks. That helps the rich shareholders and the CEOs and doesn't help the workers, doesn't help anything. So what we're looking at now is giving taxing oil company profits and then giving a rebate check to low and middle income families to cover the cost of higher energy bills. I just met with 4 or 5 senators on Thursday. This is all, you know, just happening. And I think that would be something we'll show you the proposal. I'm pretty sure you'd support it. It fits your philosophy and my philosophy. 2 other quick things, because I'm looking at the chat a little bit. I do support the anti-plastics initiative. Somebody asked me about that. And second, I didn't mention this, but in the BIF bill is $7.5 billion for electric charging vehicles. Someone asked about that, to build for the feds to subsidize building charging stations all over the place, including Peggy Shepard in bus stations like the one we saw in East Harlem, which pollutes and causes asthma of the residents there.
Thank you. And speaking of legislation, there is tremendous opportunity to revitalize areas of Northern Manhattan, address legacy environmental injustices, and prepare our communities for the clean energy transition. We thought that Build Back Better Act was the investment tool that centered people, and now it appears to be gone. What is Congress doing now to ensure that critical environmental justice investments are passed?
Okay, good question. You know, environmental justice, I've always said I had 3 priorities in anything to climate. 1 is getting the carbon out of the atmosphere. 2 is creating good paying jobs. And 3 is environmental justice. And you have to do all 3 together. That's what New York did with the CLCPA. I helped push to get it passed when the previous governor was reluctant to do it, and it helped get it done. And that's what we're doing here. So to get the BBB done, you know, we need all 50 of our senators to support the bill. We're having discussions now with all those senators, including Senator Manchin, on he has not thus far had any objections to environmental justice. So we're pushing to get something, we're having discussions. We're not there yet. It's going to take a while. I don't want to move too soon because then either Manchin says no or we get a weaker bill. But BBB, we're still working to get it done. And if it's done, it will have many of the strong environmental justice components in it that you know about and I know about. It's an uphill fight. I don't want to make people think it's going to happen in a week, but I'm working and working and working. And my father passed away. I'll just tell you a brief. I like stories.
We welcome stories. We welcome stories.
My father passed away 3 months ago, and he struggled his whole life. He was an exterminator. He didn't, but he left me with two things. Any of you have had a parent who's close to you and passed away, he's still sitting here right now with the two values he taught me even though he was never given a good break and never complained. One, always help people. That's the best thing to do. Help people who need help. And two, if you persist and keep at it and you're doing the right thing, God will reward you. So keep at it. And that's how I feel.
Yes, thank you for sharing that story. And I definitely do agree that people who, pass away are always with us, just in a different form. So thank you so much for sharing that. And if you wouldn't mind, I'm trying to be mindful of time.
Go ahead, keep going.
Okay,
thank you. More minutes.
Perfect. So in 46 of 50 states, people of color have a higher pollution exposure burden than white people, and Black people have the greatest exposure. Nationally, we are in an environment where the racial gap in safe and affordable housing and transportation, quality education, family-sustaining jobs, and social support networks and resources is expanding at a rate that is detrimental to our collective future. And since the 2020 election, 49 states have drafted more than 440 restrictive voting bills. The only way that will ensure that all Americans receive climate, economic, and environmental justice is through an empowered electorate. Can you tell us where we are with the passage of the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act?
As you know, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. And what can our members do to get these bills passed?
Good question. As you know, I'm passionate about these. And we have 50 senators who support them, but you need 60 votes in the Senate. We're never going to get any Republicans. The Republican Party used to be for voting rights. Reagan was for it, George W. Bush, it was always bipartisan, but since Trump took over the Republican Party, they're viciously against voting rights, and they're taking them away, as you said. I think they passed laws, actual laws are passed in 19 states. So the only way we were going to be able to do it was to change the rules. When I started out, there were only about 20 Democratic senators who wanted to change the rules. We got to 48, but I had the vote. People said, why'd you have the vote when you didn't have everyone? Because even when you face adversity, you got to keep at it. And having the vote, I think, advanced us. People saw where people are. And now, as a result, there is a bipartisan group talking about not just reforming the Electoral College, which would be good, but not enough, not close to enough, but actually entertaining, protecting election officials, modernizing the Election Commission, and other voting rights. And there are some good Democrats on that group that is discussing this now. Manchin and Sinema are there, of course, we need their votes, but there is also Murphy and Cardin and Warner and Shaheen and Coons. And so the best thing you guys can do on the Republican side, it's Collins, Romney, Portman, Murkowski, Tillis, Sass, Young, and Capito. Talk to these senators, tell them we need voting rights, tell them how important it is, push them. And if you know people who live in their states, you could have family, Tillis is one of them. A lot of people have family in North Carolina, but any of these states, Maryland, call them. I will get you a list of the 18 or so senators on this group, bipartisan, that's discussing this. And while we're working to get it done here, again, we're persisting, just like with BBB, people calling, writing, and telling them how important this is very helpful.
Thank you. We
You'll
all
hear
about
more from us
persisting.
on voting rights. It is not done. Okay.
Thank you so much. Yes. And we must also acknowledge the connection between race and policies and practices that have resulted in current adverse environmental, economic, and health conditions in communities of color and areas of low income. The Federal Justice 40 initiative, which was modeled after New York's, was designed to address these legacy harms, but the beta version of the resource for directing federal investments, the Climate and Economic Justice Screening Tool, seems to omit, well, it does omit race as an indicator. What is your reaction to this omission, and how do you propose we ensure investments make their way to disadvantaged communities?
Okay, this is a very good question and very important. So as you know, we put $4 billion directly to go to Black farmers. Black farmers were discriminated against from the beginning, but it was explicit. And so some right-wing group went to court, they took some farmer and they said, you can't use the explicit words of race. So now we're working with the administration to find other words that will meet court muster, but do the same thing. Communities of color have to be put at the top of the list. That's what environmental justice is all about. I've done that in bills where I can. When we did the education money, all the wealthy suburban people said, give it to them. I said, no, use Title I, and it went to inner city. When we did the vaccines, I said community health centers should go first. So same thing here. And the administration has told us that they have, that they are developing tools that will do the same thing and withstand court scrutiny.
Thank you so much for that
And
clarification.
I'll work with them on it, and you should take a look at it, you and WEAC should take a look, since you've been so much at the forefront of this. And if you think their language isn't adequate, I'll work to get that with you.
Thank you so much. We are looking at this very closely and closely examining it, and we welcome working together with you to make sure this is as robust and thorough as possible.
Great.
And for our final question, this week, the White House and Department of Transportation announced that $2.2 billion of investments through the American Rescue Plan, as well as $5.5 billion and $2 billion for the Department of Transportation's low and no emission transit vehicle program and buses and bus facility programs respectively are available.
Yes.
We are looking at these investments as an opportunity to access the resources needed for our proposed 125th Street Transportation Hub to come to fruition, and for the MTA and school bus operators to modernize their bus system, speed up the transition of their fleets from fossil fuel powered vehicles to electric buses, and facilitate a just and equitable transition of their workforces to a green energy reality that includes the full cycle of zero emission vehicles and maintenance.
Yep.
We know that clean transportation is important to you. What programs are on your radar?
Yep. There are a lot of good programs. The two you mentioned, the $5.5 billion and $2 billion for low and no emission transit. There's also a lot of money for construction for no transit. So for instance, I know you're very interested in the hub at 125th Street Transportation Hub. And there's also there's like over $10 billion in the infrastructure bill for SIG, which can be used to support things like Gateway, like Metro North, and like the hub. So the money goes to the state and some to the city. And I will lobby with you to see that, since I got them the money, I have a little bit of say, even though it's up to them. But I'll lobby with you to work on getting the hub. I know all about it. I am an old Q train rider. It used to be the D train when I was a little boy, right by my house in southern Brooklyn. And to make this connection is a very important one, and I'll help you try to get that done. There is adequate funding for it.
Okay. Thank you so much. And we would welcome working with you to get this hub completed. And I do not want to take any more of your time, but I do want to give you an opportunity to say any last words.
Yes, last words are two words. Thank you. You are a great group. You and I share so much together, and we will continue working. Don't be shy about calling on me. I tell people I am like the Brooklyn car service. 449-1111, always available.
Thank you so much. And thank you for your liveliness, your humor, and your stories, especially sharing such a personal story with us and being open and upfront about the policies, programs, and also offering to work alongside us as we fight for environmental justice.
Thanks. Have a good morning, everybody.
You as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Appreciate you. All right, moving on to the next agenda item. We're going to talk about federal policy. So he talked a lot of different, Chuck talked about a lot of different things. And we're going to give everybody our federal policy stuff. All
Yeah,
right.
I can jump in here. My name's Astrid. I work with the federal policy team along with UA in Washington, DC. So that's where we're based out of. So I'm jumping on to give some updates from the federal side, some of the things that we heard Senator Chuck Schumer talk about. And I also just wanted to highlight, I know the senator was on for a quick time. So if you do put questions or things you want to ask him in the chat, I will try to save the chat and follow up with their office to at least send them your questions and see if we're able to get answers to hopefully some of them. So feel free to do that. And yeah, so I'll jump in. The first update I wanted to share is about a piece of legislation that's currently introduced in the US House of Representatives and Senate. And this is called the Environmental Justice for All Act. And it's one of the most comprehensive environmental justice bills. So it covers a lot of different topics that are important to our communities, from like safe beauty products, especially for Black women and girls, ensuring there's grants and funding to research those products, and you know, getting outside. So there's a lot of things covered in the bill, but there were two things that I wanted to highlight and kind of explain that this bill does that are pretty important. So the first one is cumulative burden. And for those who might not know, cumulative burden is where one community has the burden and negative health effects of multiple pollutants. And for an example, we can look to East Harlem, which has the North River wastewater treatment plant, the natural gas pumping station, the Marine Transfer Station, and Manhattanville Bus Depot, all next to each other, that are all emitting pollution on top of each other. And so what a cumulative burden, what the Environmental Justice for All bill would do is, instead of each polluting source just having to be able to pollute up to a certain amount, it would require in the issuing of permits that every source would have to be considered alongside the other one. So it's not like, yes, this plant can emit this much. It's like based on what's already in the area, we can't say that adding another plant wouldn't have extra impact based on the other ones that are already there. So the bill would require that cumulative impacts would be considered in issuing permits, and that the projects must prove with reasonable certainty no harm to human health. So that's something I wanted to pull out and kind of share that language of cumulative burden. Another highlight of this bill and a reason that WEACT is supporting it, and the federal team was up in New York over the weekend, along with Representative Grijalva and Representative Maloney, to participate in some activities to try to, get the bill moving forward. So the other thing I wanted to mention was that the Environmental Justice for All Act strengthens Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, and that prohibits discrimination based on disparate impact. For example, living in a community where you're experiencing all these pollutants, you would actually have legal rights to be able to say, this is not legal, and have the grounds to be able to fight that in the courts. All right, next slide, please. So in Chuck Schumer's presentation, you maybe heard him mention Justice 40. And as many of you may know, Justice 40 is President Biden's promise to deliver at least 40% of the overall benefits from federal investments in climate and energy to disadvantaged communities. And to kind of help you understand where this is at and where it's coming from, I want to provide a brief timeline before bringing us to some recent updates from last month. So the idea of Justice 40 comes from an executive order that President Biden signed soon after he took office back in January 2021. And that's called Executive Order 14008. And in that executive order established the promise of 40% of investments in climate and energy going to disadvantaged communities. And then it kind of took a while for that executive order to have any impacts, but in July 2021, the White House released some interim guidance, just some ideas and guidance for federal agencies to start figuring out how they would actually be implementing this. And then in November 2021, as you may remember, the $1 trillion infrastructure bill became law, the bipartisan infrastructure bill. And why I'm highlighting that here is because many of the programs in the bipartisan infrastructure law, as well as the Build Back Better bill, once it gets passed, hopefully, will be covered in the Justice 40 initiative. So that means many of those programs to, meet President Biden's executive order must have at least 40% of the investments going to disadvantaged communities. And to bring us to kind of the current update, last month, at the end of last month, Biden had tasked the Council on Environmental Quality, which is part of the executive branch that deals with environmental issues at the federal level. So Biden had tasked the Council on Environmental Quality to come up with a screening tool called the Climate and Economic Justice Screening Tool. So they released a draft of this tool at the end of last month. So this is kind of a big update, and you heard Yua ask Chuck Schumer about some of the critiques that are coming up for this tool. And one of the main ones is it doesn't include race as an indicator, even though study after study and just hearing from community members, folks living near polluting facilities, race is a stronger indicator than income in regarding to environmental justice, like pollution exposure, negative health impacts. So it's definitely, they have the reasoning. What they say is it's because it will get held up in court. But a lot of environmental justice communities are critiquing this because race is the biggest indicator. So creating the tool without that is definitely, presents some challenges. So as the Justice 40 said, oh yes, that should be February 2022. Thank you for catching that. I apologize for the error on the slide. So to kind of explain what that 40% going to disadvantaged communities means, I wanted to help talk about a little bit about what defines a disadvantaged community. And if you'd like to kind of put any ideas in the chat as you're thinking of it, that would definitely be welcome. And so you can jump to the next slide, please. So the next slide will show a definition of disadvantaged communities that New York State's Climate Justice Working Group, which WEAC staff member Sonal Jessel is part of, kind of came up because they're working on a screening tool for New York State. And that screening tool does include race. And I think Sonal will have a presentation at some point to members to talk about the New York tool. But today I'm going to focus on the federal tool. But the definition of disadvantaged communities are those that bear the burdens of negative public health effects environmental pollution, impacts of climate change, and possess certain socioeconomic criteria or comprise high concentrations of low and moderate income households. So kind of what Biden had tasked the Council on Environmental Quality to come up with is to create a definition or to figure out a map of what all the criteria are to find what those disadvantaged communities are in the US. And like I said, there's a number of critiques, and how they came up with it is based on using, or let's jump to the next slide so I can show the map and kind of talk through it. So this is an example of a community. I took a screenshot of the tool. If you'd like to explore the tool, I put a little link to the URL, and I will also drop it in the chat, but that's something that you can use to look around, and you can explore different communities. But basically how the screening tool works is it takes different climate indicators and economic indicators. So for a community, and it's based on census tracts, and census tracts are groups of, on average, 4,000 people living in an area as designated by the census. So in this map here, you can see the dark blue outline is for a census tract. And because of the grayer shading, that means it is considered a disadvantaged community by this tool. And I do want to highlight that this tool is in the draft stages. So at this point, they're taking feedback from community members, stakeholders, folks all across the US to see if it's doing an accurate job. And so for this part of the map, I will talk you through why it's considered disadvantaged by the tool. But I'd also recommend, if the tool has a lot of information, so I'd recommend, looking through it and spending time, reading the methodology. I think our federal policy team would also be more than happy to offer, a workshop with folks who are really interested in exploring the tool and kind of getting into the nitty-gritty of it.
That would be great.
Yeah, thanks, Sally. Perfect. So just as an example, this community that I highlighted, that census tract, would be considered disadvantaged. And here's the reasons that they found based on the data set that it analyzed. So it has to meet at least one environmental or climate indicator. In this example, it meets 5, as well as income indicators. So for this one, it has high levels of diesel particulate matter exposure, high levels of traffic proximity and volume. It meets a high threshold for having lead paint, proximity to hazardous waste facilities, proximity to Superfund sites, and proximity to risk management plan facilities, which I wasn't sure what that is, but I'd be happy to look into it more, and as well as linguistic isolation. So those are the criteria that makes this one considered a disadvantaged community. And all that means is that if some of that funding was going to the federal investments, it would count towards that 40% or the Justice 40. So I know it's a lot of information. And like I said, the federal team would be happy to try to go through, a workshop if that's something folks would be interested to really play around with the tool. Just in the interest of time, I'll go through this next one. And maybe skip. Charles, should we have some time for questions, do you think? You can see.
Yeah, you can actually, looking at time. No, let's go through the situation and people can put their questions in the chat. And I think
Okay.
that we're going to have a meeting around this with the federal policy later on down the line. So let's get through all the information and educate everybody before we move into questions and answers.
That sounds great. So then could you skip this slide and move to the next one, please? Okay, so this is just another example. This one's from Washington Heights. The blue one is the one that's highlighted once again. And since it has that gray shading, it is considered a disadvantaged community by this screening tool. And for this example, it meets those income thresholds, which means income is less than or equal to twice the federal policy level and at or below 20% for higher ed enrollment. So I know a lot of this is like very technical terms, and that's kind of these indicators that they use to define it. So they're complicated tools, and that's why we want to make sure to try to give you an overview, because I know a lot of Justice 40 and talking about these investments is coming up. So we want to make sure folks understand a little bit about what's going on. And I also just want to highlight that in this tool, I'm not sure if you can see very well, but on the right side, it says send feedback. So if you did want to go into the tool, and once again, I'll try to put that again in the notes. Let me copy that. You can look up your community and try to see if it counts as disadvantaged, and using your understanding of it, you can either agree with what it's showing, if it's showing disadvantaged or not, or at that blue thing on the right, you can click send feedback in the map and try to give them, say this is not accurate, or, because they're just basing it off data and they don't really seem to have a process for giving that actual feedback. And at the federal level, WEAC is working with the Environmental Justice Forum, which is about 15 environmental justice organizations, to figure out, some of our critiques and be able to present that to the federal government in the hopes of making this tool better, because it is related to funding, and we really want to make sure that these federal dollars are getting to our communities that need it the most. And the only other thing I wanted to point out, and I'll put the link in the chat as well, is there are some listening sessions coming up, and let's see, they are on March 22nd and April 15th, and those are welcome to anyone in the public. So if this is something that's interesting you, if you're wanting to get involved, you can definitely sign up to those, and it would be on the record where they'll be able to take feedback from community members. Since I know this is a lot of information, I'm going to put my email in the chat, and any of you are more than welcome to reach out. So I just want to thank you for bearing with me. I know it's a lot of information, but I'm really excited to be here today. I'm new with WEAC, so really glad to have a chance to meet some of the members. And I'll pass it on to my coworkers who have a few more federal updates to share with everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Astrid. That was really informative. So as Astrid mentioned, first of all, let me introduce myself. Hi, everyone. I'm Anastasia Gordon. I work with Astrid at the Federal Policy Office, and I am the Energy and Transportation Policy Manager. So yeah, as Astrid mentioned before, we're just gonna give you a brief overview of other things that are happening at the Federal Policy Office. As we heard from Chuck Schumer, Build Back Better is not, I have here stalled, but clearly there's some motivation for it. There's discussions around pulling out some of the climate provisions, and hopefully that includes some of the things that we're looking for in terms of tax credits for clean energy and remediation of lead, block grants for clean energy projects, things like that. So we'll definitely continue advocating for maintaining those EJ provisions, but also deprioritizing spending on false solutions like carbon capture and storage and biomass and some of these things that could continue our reliance on fossil fuels and also continue to put environmental burdens on low income and communities of color. The other thing I wanted to point out that last fall we did a climate poll. We did it because of all these investments coming into infrastructure and Build Back Better. And we wanted to know, okay, what are Black and Brown communities thinking of these clean energy and climate change provisions? And we did a poll amongst 5 states, particularly Nevada, Arizona, Texas, Georgia, Florida, and Pennsylvania, around this climate change and clean energy transition. And we found that, these communities are, not a surprise, being impacted by climate change and want urgent action, but also green jobs. Having access to clean energy jobs was very important to them. Also, there's a lack of communication about how these jobs and how action to tackle climate change will affect these communities. So that's something we are going to continue to advocate for in terms of making sure that our communities have access to clean energy jobs, and that they know that there are programs that are able to allow them to do so, like job training. And we have our own job training programs, but there are many others across the country from community groups as well. Then the other thing I wanted to highlight is that the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, has a robust body of rulemakings coming up around the power sector and the transportation sector. This year, they'll be updating rules on greenhouse gas emissions from existing and new sources of pollution from power plants, ozone, particulate matter, mercury and air toxics, cross-state air pollution, for instance. On the transportation side, and this was proposed this week, was released this week, are those heavy-duty nitrogen oxide rules for the heavy-duty transportation sector, so our trucks and our buses. So we will be, participating in comments at public hearings and putting in formal comments. Actually, we've already started with methane this last year around the UN climate change conference. There was this big announcement about countries trying to reduce methane to reach international climate goals. Well, EPA came out with its own methane emissions proposal to reduce emissions, and we've already submitted comments on that. We have submitted comments on other initiatives from the US Department of Transportation around equitable distribution of charging infrastructure. Also, we had a panel discussion on driving down pollution from the transportation sector just 2 weeks ago on February 22nd, and we'll be using that to come up with our position on how we engage EPA on what we want to see from the transportation. We want reductions, we want mandatory reductions from trucks and buses, and we also want to see an ambition towards electrifying the medium and heavy duty sector industry, because it's the highest source of particulate matter and ozone pollution in our communities. And lastly, from my side, and then I'll turn it over to Yua again, we also are engaging with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and they, particularly around liquefied natural gas, which is natural gas that's been liquefied and it's easy to transport, easy to export, but our exports are increasing energy prices. The build out is increasing environmental pollution burdens on, on low income communities, especially in the Gulf. And we also have pipelines and stuff in New York as well. So it's really, especially with what's going on in the world today with energy prices and the conflict, inflation and energy prices are going up. So we need the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission that regulates that industry to make sure that they embed climate and they embed environmental justice priorities in their permitting practices, so that they realize we need to shift off of fossil fuels and move towards more renewable energy, where we've already started drafting a LNG letter from environmental advocates across the country using the environmental justice leadership forum that Ashrid told you about, and that'll be we'll release that to the relevant agencies next week, Tuesday. So let me pass this on to Yua, and feel free to email me or ask me any questions at a later stage. Thank you. Thank you all.
Yep, if you have any questions, make sure you put them in the chat. We will get to it. We're going to make sure that we move forward in our meeting. All right.
Well, Charles, I didn't do my last two portions. Do you still want me to do the last two, or do you want to just...
You can do your last two portions and then we'll do a poll.
Okay. So as Anastasia was saying, I'm just going to pick up from where she left off. I would like to formally introduce myself. My name is Yua Vosper. I am the Policy and Regulatory Manager in the DC office. My focus areas are building electrification, climate education, and toxics. So one big toxin that Senator Schumer did mention is lead service lines. And according to Senator Schumer, who we just learned from his website, New York has 360,000 lead pipes still delivering water to people's homes, making it the fourth highest in the nation. So we have an opportunity because these lines are primarily in low-income disadvantaged communities. So with the bipartisan infrastructure bill, there is money that is available, $15 billion, in fact, for lead pipe remediation, and an additional $9 billion to help with lead reduction in disadvantaged communities. So We Act wants to turn this into something meaningful. So we have teamed up with a company called Blue Conduit. It's a software company that builds machine learning software to support efficient lead removal, and the NRDC, which will also be doing our policy and our more legal actions. But We Act will be the ones who will be advocating with the community. So with this, we are going to develop a lead service line replacement inventory tool. And this tool will be used with communities, organizations. So one community organization and then two of their partners, and we will work with them to educate about the health concerns with lead service lines and engage decision makers, because they will have a visual inventory tool to be able to better speak with utility leaders, stakeholders, whoever government officials they need to get lead service lines fully removed. So we have, with this project, secured 2 out of 3 hub cities. One is Richmond, Virginia, and the second is Buffalo, New York. And with Buffalo, New York, we have also conducted meetings with the Buffalo Sewer Authority to discuss feasibility and how to further collaborate. And we are still looking for our final city. We are in talks to solidify, but we have not made a final decision as of yet. And this is also important. We talked about disadvantaged communities and the definition of disadvantaged communities. So recently, the EPA released a memorandum that discussed 49% of the funding is going to be administered as grants and forgivable loans that will be distributed to disadvantaged communities with lead service line replacement. And it is very important because each state defines what a disadvantaged community is. And this is meaningful because if a full state is not defined, one section won't be eliminated because another section is not defined as a disadvantaged community. Each state can, that means we can have and distribute more funding into the states. And so this is something that is very important in the development of and how we fully eliminate lead service pipelines. And finally, the Safer Beauty Bills package. So this is a suite of 4 bills that deals with toxic removal in our personal care products, our ingredient transparency in personal care and cosmetics, and it also advocates for salon workers who are constantly having to inhale these fumes and these different toxins and be around these toxins every day. So I talked about it last, and some of you I saw in the lobby trainings, and I think everybody who did attend, it was open to the public, and it was great to see some members of WEACT on these lobby trainings. So recently we've held meetings with the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, and they are important because they hold jurisdiction over the FDA. And we are in talks of beginning lobby training. So we will be doing lobbying. We will actually be lobbying from now until the end of March with the different groups. So if you attended the lobby trainings, you were put into a group, and we will be lobbying for approval of these bills, and that we have stronger ingredient transparency, removal of toxins out of our products, and our salon care workers are protected. And that is it for me. Moving on to you, Charles.
All right, thank you. So I believe we have a poll. So let me click on the poll. Why is the poll not working?
By the way, Charles, you are looking really handsome today.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
I want to see Bailey live.
Bailey should have his picture on, but thank you very much.
Just put it back on. But Charles, do you want me to launch
Cool,
it?
both of you looking good.
Can you launch the poll, Bailey?
Yes.
Launch
So
the
everybody, the poll has been launched. The first question is, what federal policy areas are you most interested in? It's multiple choice. And these are all the topics: Environmental Justice for All Act, the Justice 40 and Climate and Economic Justice Screening Tool, Transportation Regulations, Power Sector Regulations, Lead Service Line Replacement, or Safety Beauty Bills Package. So I'm going to give everybody about 2 minutes to click on that poll. We'll go on. It's gonna be 3 to 4 questions. So just take your time and answer the poll questions, and it will give you the results.
You'll get the results later.
Right. And the other, I apologize, the other link, if anybody has another policy area that you want to just put it in the chat, this poll does not allow you to do the other part of it. So
I've got a quick question on question 3.
Yes.
For community, do you mean just larger community or like our census tract?
I believe it's for the larger community.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. So everyone can see the poll, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, great. So we'll give you a couple more seconds, and then I believe our next speaker will be Espiat. Is he in the room yet?
Espiat should be joining by 11:15, so hopefully he'll be in shortly.
Okay, so we're going to maybe 11:15. So Pamela, are you around? I know you're here. Pamela?
I am here.
So let's, while everyone's doing that, I'm going to move to you and talk about the candidates forums that we'll be having. So are we almost done with the poll? Does it look like, Bailey?
it's still going. I just want to give people, it's 11:10, just give them 1 more minute. Just want to make sure everybody gets it, and then I'll close the poll and we'll talk about it.
There's
then
some
Pamela-
comments that said they don't see the poll. You'd have to go to the icons in the bottom. If you're on a cell phone, You would have to click on the 3 dots and then there's like the option to pick a poll and then the questions pop up. On a desktop, I'm not quite sure how that looks, but I'm sure it's similar where you have to look for the icon or
Right.
maybe it pops up.
And I believe it's, and thank you, Emily, for that information and keeping us fully educated about the Zoom. We have if you're on a desktop, it says poll. So at the bottom of your screen, you can kindly click on the poll and you should be able to get it. Okay.
So Charles, it'll be 30 more seconds, everyone, and then I'll close the poll.
Okay. Then Pamela, I'm going to go to you right after that and talk about your candidates forums. Okay. So
Thank
until I
you.
close the poll, we'll move on to that.
All right, 20 seconds and the poll will be closed. $15 seconds. 10 seconds.
These are long seconds there, Bailey.
But I gotta give people time. Gotta give people time. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. The poll is now closed and I will pass it over to my colleague, Pamela.
All right, Pamela, I'm going to your slide now, Pamela.
Thank you.
There you go.
Hello, everyone. My name is Pamela Stewart Martinez. I am the manager of civic engagement, and I am so excited about April because April, We Act will have their candidates forum for 2022. You'll have the opportunity to meet candidates who want to represent your community, hear what their platform is about, ask questions about issues that affect all of our neighborhoods. So for the candidates forum, April 9th is the first candidate forum, and we're going to have, that's going to be for the state assembly races in the 70th and 71st district. April 14th is going to be the state senate and New York state controller candidates forum, and April 21st is going to be state assembly again, the 68th and 72nd districts. And April 29th, we're looking at governor's race, lieutenant governor, attorney general, and last but not least, our federal races, May 14th, 2022. So look forward to seeing you all there. For more information about this, you'll be able to find it in the next couple of days on our website, www.weact.org. And I hand it back to you, Charles.
Thank you very much, Pamela. Really appreciate you. So
What about Assembly District 72? If that.
Yeah, that was listed there. That's going to be on April 21st.
Okay.
April 21st, 2022.
Thank you. Okay.
So definitely keep in contact with our website. And as you already know, that we'll be sending out texts and emails that everybody know that we're going to be doing these candidate forums. They happen on Saturdays and they're going to be happening on Thursdays. So those are the 2 days in April that you should be looking for a candidate forum from We Act. Okay. And if you have some questions that you want to submit, that'd be great. You should send it to us before so that way we can incorporate that information to our meeting. I just got in, Espion's in, so I'm going to highlight him. And let's see where he's at. Espion, I hear you're here. Just let me give me a second so I can highlight you. Let me go back. My computer is not agreeing with me, but hold on. Okay, and let me see where you're at, INS. Okay. Unmute. Hello, Representative Espiat. How are you doing this evening? I'm just looking for your photograph. Doesn't seem like it.
Yeah, it's there. It's up.
It's up?
Yeah, I see it.
I'm trying to spotlight you. So we want to connect you with a person who's going to be leading your conversation, and that will be Anastasia.
Hi. Pleasure to meet you, Congressman Espiat. My name is Anastasia. I'm the Energy and Transportation Policy Manager, and I will be welcoming you and curating the Q&A today.
Thank you.
Yes, so hello again, everyone. I have the honor of introducing Congressman Espiat. I'll just give a brief bio and then we'll get into the Q&A. So, U.S. Representative Espiat proudly represents New York's 13th Congressional District and is now serving his 3rd term in Congress. He was born in the Dominican Republic, but grew up in Washington Heights and is the first Dominican American to serve in the US Congress. The congressman is a staunch advocate for environmental protection, job creation, investments in affordable housing, infrastructure improvements, and better education. He currently serves as a member on several committees, including the House Appropriations Committee, as well as the House Education and Labor Committee. He's also part of the leadership of the Congressional Hispanic and Progressive Caucuses. And we have a history with working with you in terms of revitalizing the East Harlem 125th Street Corridor and the East Harlem waterfront. Welcome, Congressman Espiat. Thank you for joining us today. And before I open up, as I mentioned, I'll give you 5 to 10 minutes to give us some opening remarks.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much to WEAC for the great work that you've been doing for decades now. While in the state legislature, I was able to work with Peggy and Cecil in a host of things. You have certainly been an organization that has led this district, and I dare to say you have been an example of the urban fight for resiliency and renewable energy for the nation, really. And as a result, the agendas that you put forward are ones that are followed very closely by other organizations across the country. And I know that part of your beginnings is very much connected to the North River plant, the structure that was placed there way before I was in government. But you, Peggy, and many of you began your activism around the impact that would have on all of Northern Manhattan, as well as the sort of like the redlining of bus depots in Harlem and across communities of color. The routes, I know that I worked very closely with you when we tried to begin the marine transfer station so that we will break with the cycle of garbage trucks coming right through our community and impacting on the quality of air that obviously contribute to many of the ills faced by seniors and children, asthma rates, etc. So I thank you for your leadership, and I look forward to continue to work with you as we move forward. I'd rather spend most of the time answering the questions. So with that, I give it back to you.
Okay, thank you so much. And it's certainly been a pleasure working with you, and we'll continue to do so. So we've prepared a few questions, so I'll jump straight into it. There's tremendous opportunity to revitalize areas of Northern Manhattan, address legacy environmental injustices, and prepare our communities for the clean energy transition. We thought the Build Back Better Act was the investment that centered people, and now it appears to be gone or stalled, or we don't know. What is Congress doing now to ensure that our communities are revitalized and our members aren't left behind?
Well, first and foremost, we're still fighting to bring back to the table provisions of the Build Back Better Act, which I think it's so crucial that we pass. And it has in it a host of initiatives that will bring about relief to the American people, to families, but also address the issue of the environment. And I supported the Infrastructure Investment and Job Act, which included $170 billion, $90 billion of which go for water infrastructure. In addition to that, my office launched an interactive map, infrastructure map in my webpage that calls upon community members, anybody that lives in the district, to report an infrastructure problem that they may face, from the very simple, sort of like flooding that may happen on a street corner, to the more complicated, sort of like waterfront green development pieces, or the Second Avenue subway, or connectivity with 5G in our schools and in our NYCHA housing complexes. So I urge all of the members of the district to access that map and report what are some of the investments that could be made in our community, so that it gives us a roadmap as an office to work with you in addressing one by one some of these very critical needs. I also support the partnership, the federal partnership, and I've asked the regional administrator, Lisa Garcia, to meet with me to address those needs. So there are other funding streams that we can access to try to implement an action plan that will respond to the great needs of the community. I recently attended the COP26 conference in Glasgow with the congressional delegation, and obviously that proved to be at the very end somewhat successful. It could have done better, but we did attain some victories in that conference, and I hope to continue to participate in future efforts, both locally and internationally.
Just one thing, Anastasia, can everyone mute themselves? Please, thank you.
Any other questions?
Betty Williams should be the one needs to be muted, please, if you can.
Or Charles, if you have the ability as the host.
I'll take care of it. Don't worry about it.
Thank you, Congressman. Yes, absolutely. There are the tools in the toolbox as to ensure that we have these historic investments in our community. I wanted to switch gears a little bit. We must acknowledge the connection between race and policies and practices that have resulted in current adverse environmental, economic, and health conditions in communities of color and areas of low income. The Federal Justice 40 initiative, which was modeled after New York's, was designed to address these legacy harms, but the beta version of the resource for directing federal investments, the Climate and Economic Justice Screening Tool, omits race as an indicator. What is your reaction to the omission, and how do you propose we ensure investments make their way to disadvantaged communities?
Yes, that is an issue and one that concerns me, but the 2022 spending bill has over $14 billion, and we have called members of Congress, including myself, have called on Biden to restart negotiation with the $555 billion Climate Investment Act as a foundation. And Biden did set a 40% benefit threshold for disadvantaged communities. So I think that we need to continue to push in that direction to ensure that those goals and objectives are met in any funding stream that we put forward. As you know, I carried for a long time the environmental justice amendment, which called for any investment to include a formula that would guarantee access to funding to those communities that are disproportionately hurt, and which, by the way, happen to be the ones that least contribute to global warming. And so the ones that contribute less are the ones that are hurt the most, and very often are the ones that are left outside of the funding stream. So we will continue to push for no less than 40% of the benefits. And we will continue to push and call on Biden to start negotiations with the $555 billion Climate Investment Act as a foundation for spending and investment.
And we will be joining you in that fight. Thank you so much. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I could hear you.
Excellent. I was saying we'll certainly be joining you in that fight.
Thank you, thank you.
All right, so my third question is, we know that energy costs are the second highest expense for residents of New York. One of the unintended, or maybe it's intentional, consequences of the Russian invasion of Ukraine is rising energy costs in the US and plans to build out more liquefied natural gas exports, prolonging our reliance on fossil fuels. What can you tell us about plans that Congress has to address this moment? What are some of the actions that Congress is taking to protect consumers at the gas pump and communities from fossil fuel expansion?
That's a great question, because many voices have emerged asking for an increase in fossil fuel production. And I disagree. This is a perfect time for us to transition into clean energy. And I support and will be calling for also an investigation from our leader, Pelosi, on the price gouging efforts that we find at the gas pumps. Also, we're calling for an increase in the low-income home energy assistance program to help consumers. And locally, also, I support the Attorney General, Tish James' efforts to monitor and ensure that big oil doesn't take full advantage of this crisis. And so those are the things that I think are at the table right now. This is a perfect sort of like crossroad for us to acknowledge that we must not continue depending on fossil fuels, and to transition long-term to green energy, and to ensure that there is no price gouging, and that we expand opportunities in programs like the low-income home energy assistance program that will help homeowners and support any efforts for stopping big oil to take advantage of communities like the ones I represent during this crisis.
Absolutely. We have a letter coming out soon that expresses those same exact things to protect low-income communities and communities of color from rising energy prices through LIHEAP and the weatherization assistance program, and just generally transitioning to renewable energy. And so I have one last prepared question, and maybe there is time to have some questions from the audience. But my last question is, we are excited to partner with you on several community changing projects that will build resilience, economic stability, social inclusion, and bright futures for our communities. These include the East Harlem Transportation Hub and the Frontline Climate Campaigns, core campaigns. How will the East Harlem Transportation Hub benefit the community, in your opinion? What can residents do to ensure it comes to fruition? And lastly, what what role do climate and environmental justice education, workforce development programs, and green entrepreneurship have in transforming Harlem, Inwood, Washington Heights, and the nation? So a lot there, but.
Well, this is a great question, and I think that you are speaking about a great opportunity for our community. As you know, just recently, the Department of Transportation moved the 2nd Avenue subway to its engineering phase. And so, that's the second phase, the second stage, which places it, I think, on full track to become a viable and clean and green uptown Grand Central. And for me, that's important because, as you know, East Harlem continues to be a transportation desert. And so not only is the Lexington Avenue the most overcrowded line in the country, but folks that live there have to walk a greater amount of blocks to get to access public transportation. And that's an area that has over 75% of its residents use public transportation. In fact, you've seen how pedestrians are exposed to more traffic, vehicular accidents in that area than any other area in the district. So the 2nd Avenue subway coming uptown to 125th Street will not only provide public transportation to a public transportation desert, but I think it provides a great opportunity for the smart and green development of that area. And so it will connect Harlem to the rest of the world. I see it as a regional project, not just a local project. It's a $7 billion project that will connect Harlem to Metro North, and as such to outer counties like Westchester, Rockland, and others. It will provide a connection to LaGuardia Airport via bus and future water transportation on the Harlem River and Hudson River. So in addition, it will connect, as I said earlier, the 2nd Avenue subway to the Lexington Avenue line. We've seen how the first phase has mobilized hundreds of thousands of people on a regular basis and has contributed tremendously to the economic growth of the first phase area, which is south of 96th Street. For me, this project will not be successful unless it includes a job component to it. And for that reason, myself and former Congressman Charlie Rangel are working with City College to establish what is the Charles B. Rangel Institute of Transportation and Infrastructure, where we will be able to train our young people to access those prevailing wage jobs that will be created through this project. So this is important. We must do it in a smart and green way. We must avoid the displacement of small and community-based businesses, and we must include the voices of our community in the planning and development of this project. And of course, we just don't want a subway exit. We want a transportation hub that is built smart and resilient to ensure that we connect Harlem and East Harlem to the rest of the world.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. There's part of this question was around climate and environmental justice education. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, of course. I mean, someone just put in the chat, don't turn 125th Street into 34th Street. And that's exactly what we don't want to do. We want to make sure that this development has the fingerprints of the community, that community groups like WEAC are part of the planning. We've held several roundtable discussions where WEAC has participated. We expect Secretary Buttigieg to come soon and visit the 2nd Avenue subway. As you know, 70% of the work has already been done. The tunnel work was done back in the 70s before the city economy ran into trouble. So in terms of investment, this is one project that's super shovel ready. And so we must now learn from the obstacles that the first phase faced And we know what kind of job opportunities may be there because we already have the blueprint from the first phase, and ensure that it's a project that will have the full input of the community, and that it will benefit as many working class families as possible, and transform East Harlem from a transportation desert to one that has accessible first class public transportation available for its families.
Yes, that's great to hear. Thank you so much for that. I have a few questions coming out from the chat from Marriott. It has been revealed that the census grossly undercounted our communities and therefore the resources for services such as sanitation. She's asking, this person is asking, sorry, right. Essentially is asking about sanitation services and ensuring that areas remain pest-free and clean and with clean air. Can you tell us about anything, any initiatives?
Yes. Well, our district was fortunately the district that ranked #1 in the city in terms of its count. And that happened because every 10 years, for the second census in a row, we did it back in 2010 and we did it again this year. We ranked #1 in the city and in terms of its return. Unfortunately, New York State did not do that, and we lost one congressional seat because about 89 census applications short. We lost to Minnesota. We lost one congressional seat. Had we answered an additional 100 census applications, we would have kept the full number of our congressional delegation for New York State. But we must do better with regards to sanitation services. And I've been working with each of the city council members because clearly our streets are filthy, they're dirty. I mean, I don't need to tell you that, particularly during the pandemic, it's really something that must be addressed. And at the city council level, I'm working with each and every member of our city council delegation to ensure that they assign the dollars that are necessary to increase garbage pickup and cleaning in our district to make sure that our districts are clean and pest-free.
That's excellent. Thank you so much. I believe we just have just a little over 5 minutes. So I see some hands, maybe Patricia. Do you have any questions, or this was from a former?
If anyone has any questions, you can put it in the chat.
I put some questions in the chat. I put several questions in the chat, and there were a lot of issues I have is, about environment, saving older buildings, connected to Black history should be part of environment because recycling buildings, we're not tearing down and using the materials and things like that. So that's an environmental issue. Another is, free health insurance for seniors, so these are all the things I wanted to talk about. Free health insurance for seniors, because we shouldn't have to pay premiums at all,
Right. So let me do this. Why don't we do this? Why don't you put those in the chat, and Anastasia, as they come up, Anastasia will ask the questions. Okay.
Yeah, they're already in this. I've had them in the chat all throughout the talk, meeting. I put them in the chat.
All right. So let's get that. Anastasia, you can read through the chat, and SBI, if you see something that you want to answer real quick.
Well, in regards to prescription drugs, yesterday I was invited to a forum where we discussed the high cost of prescription drugs. And in the Build Back Better program, we have a provision that calls for a capping of $35 a month for a necessary prescription drug like insulin, which is going right through the roof. And that's a life-saving prescription drug. And we also support the concept that Medicare should be negotiating the prices of many prescription drugs. That's included in the Build Back Better program, but unfortunately, that's still stuck in the Senate. I hope that it comes back. They're able to bring it back, and we can maybe approve and pass that legislation separately.
You know, we need free health insurance. Other countries have free health insurance. We need it too here, you know, especially a senior citizen shouldn't have to pay anything for insurance, nothing.
I agree 100%.
And I heard that somebody mentioned that the president might pass a bill or something like that, but we got to, you know, create a massive demonstration or something to let them know we need free health insurance, especially for, you know, the disadvantaged and senior citizens. We shouldn't have to pay it, anything. If other countries can have free health, we can too.
I agree. We're far behind the rest of the world on that. I see there's a question about bus lines, and I've been supportive of the special bus lane. I fought for it in the first pilot project was on 207th Street. And I caught hell from the local businesses, but it proved to be very successful. And we also did that, I may say by myself, because the rest of the electeds were not supportive of it, but we did the select bus service lane also on 125th Street.
I do have a question. As you know, New York City has the largest public housing, and we're going through some sort of a transition. Can you respond to that, and what do you think federal government should be doing in response to this?
Well, there's a $32 billion component that I fought very hard for in Build Back Better, along with Senator Chuck Schumer, for the infrastructure needs of NYCHA. Now, NYCHA has major infrastructure needs. We're not going to be able to nickel and dime ourselves out of the problems faced by the NYCHA complexes, where over 400,000 people live, which are primarily very expensive issues: roof work, pointing, elevators, boilers. Those are the kinds of issues that impact the daily quality of life of residents and families in NYCHA buildings. And the need for NYCHA, which I believe also as an authority requires a major overhaul, because I think that they're horrible. Part of the problem is the administration itself, historically. But, you know, we did allocate in Build Back Better $32 billion, which is close to the $40 billion need that NYCHA has for its capital improvement program. So we came to bat and we were able to include that in Build Back Better. But however, as I said earlier, that's still stuck in the Senate. So we must continue to push for that to become a reality. And so for us to be able to address the capital needs of NYCHA and lift, because for example, a problem like mold or leaky faucets and leaky pipes is very much connected to the envelope of the building. The roof and brick needs the pointing work required for that building. Once you fix that, in many ways, you've improved the quality of life internally of each apartment. You won't be able to patch it up and just do shabby work and expect for mold not to show up in the bathroom and for chipping paint not to be found in a child's bedroom. So this is expensive work. We know what it is. We could do it. We allocated the money. The money is there. Now we got to fight for it to come out.
Thank you, Congressman Esbiat. I know we're just approaching time, and I just wanted to give you the opportunity to give any closing remarks before we close.
Well, thank you so much. Again, thank you to WEACT. I hope that my offices continue to interact with you the way we had in the past. We will make sure that we work together with the community. I know that I have a personal link to the organization. I grew up right there on 153rd Street, right near you. I went to school right across the street from where your offices are at, and my old high school was there, and I know intimately the core area of the organization, where the organization is, and what the services that they provide. So to me, this is personal as well as important for the rest of the district. So thank you for the work that you do, and keep the faith.
Thank you so much. Thanks for sharing your insights and all the great work that you're doing, and we look forward to continuing to partner
Okay.
with.
And I may add that I will join you this afternoon with Chairman Grijalva, who's in town.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much.
We look forward to seeing you there.
Good afternoon.
so
I have
take care.
a question. Hello? Can I be heard? Hello?
We're going to
Hello?
move on. We have a couple more things that we have to do. So if you can put your question in the chat, we can get SPI back, or we can have the question answered from his office. Okay?
I'm on audio. I'm not online.
So let's hear your question. We'll take notes, and then we'll get it answered by SPI's office.
Okay, then. First of all, my name is Yvette Alves, and I'm a Bronx resident. And my question is in reference to the Hunts Point market. That market has always been a high concentration of truck traffic. And with the combination of the Hunts Point market as well as the Fulton Fish market, the truck traffic has doubled, maybe even tripled. Not only that, you have also the CSX train that comes through there. My question is, has that area been surveyed or going to be surveyed in reference to the abundance of truck traffic and steel dust that's in the air? Because the Bronx has a very high concentration of asthma within children.
We're going to address that. And that's a very good question. And the Transportation Hub, and you also have a picker plant there. So there's a lot of things that we're going to be doing in the Bronx, trying to get that mitigated to a degree where we can reduce all those different things. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
You're so very welcome. All right, moving on to the next part of our meeting. We're at the time. I am going to move it over to what's next. Just let me check. The Planning Committee.
All right, thank you, Charles. I'll take this. My name is Emily Marte. I'm the chair of the Planning Committee here at We Act for Environmental Justice. And I would like people to consider joining the We Act Planning Committee. Right now we have a few members that are finishing their terms, and we're hoping that we could still continue to do our mission by representing our community. Next slide. So what is the purpose of the We Act Planning Committee? Here we have to oversee the planning and implementation of member initiatives, to work towards effective communication between membership and staff. So that's one of the most important things, just having that representation of the Upper Manhattan community, and then bringing it over to We Act staff so that we could do that and implement everything. To represent the general membership body's goals and encourage membership participation, to assist the executive body in meeting organization goals, to ensure effective governance, and to set up a pipeline for leadership development. So if there's ever anything that you want to learn or be better at, a new skill that you want, usually We Act provides that training for you. So it's been a great learning experience for me and a lot of the members. And I'm sad to be finishing my 2 terms because that's the max. But it's a great experience, and I hope that you all will consider it. Next slide. And I'll pass it off to Ron.
Yes, good morning. My name is Ron Thomas. I'm a longtime resident of Hamilton Heights and a longtime member of We Act. I just want to talk about the qualifications for being on the Planning Committee. The Planning Committee shall consist of those members democratically elected by the larger membership body. Planning Committee members shall be in good standing with their membership dues and shall have a history of active participation in We Act projects. The EHJLT working groups events, membership meeting attendance, volunteering, etc. So you should have a lot of enthusiasm for civic responsibilities and duties. Next slide. Now, what are the responsibilities of a planning committee member? Number one, setting the monthly membership meeting agenda. Number two, assemble via Zoom 2 to 3 times per month. Number three, plan the annual membership meeting with staff. Number four, endorsing policy campaigns subject to executive approval. And number five, members of the planning committee will have the responsibilities to solicit ideas from the broader membership and be a liaison to executive leadership and WEAC board of directors. Next slide. Terms of office. The membership of the planning committee will be for a period of 2 years, which constitutes 1 term. Members may serve 2 consecutive terms, whereafter members must step down for the duration of 1 term, which is 2 years. After sitting out for 1 term or 2 years, former planning committee members may apply for re-election. So I'm about to finish up. I would like to have someone coming behind me who is excited about this kind of work. And I encourage you to run for the planning committee. Next slide.
Good morning, everyone. This is Bailey from WEAC for Environmental Justice, the manager of membership here. Just want to say thank you for attending our meeting here today. But the planning committee, and I'll get to the application in just one brief moment. I started in 2011 as a volunteer and moved on to staff back in 2013. And the growth that I've experienced under WEAC has been tremendous. Some of you members remember me when I first started, and you gave me the boost that I needed to step my game up to be a part of not only the planning committee. I took over for 2 previous chairs, and that would be James Burke, who all of you should know, and then also Marquise Jenkins. So I've had the privilege of making sure that the planning committee does what it's supposed to do in its bylaws. So I will put the link to be a planning committee member. There's a formal application that must be submitted along with your headshot. Applications are being taken from today on and will end on May 6, 2020. If anyone is interested, I will put the link in the chat. Please apply for the planning committee. It is a vital part of what we do here at WEAC. Thank you very much. I'll pass it to Charles.
Wait a minute, Bailey, you have a question. They want to know, can people outside of Northern Manhattan join the planning committee?
As the previous slide indicated, 8 members must be from Northern Manhattan, which constitutes East Harlem, West Harlem, Central Harlem, Washington Heights, Inwood. The 1 lone member can reside outside of the community. So if you are outside of Northern Manhattan, East, West, Central Harlem, Washington Heights, Inwood, you can apply for the planning committee. I'm putting the link in the chat. So that question, if this directed you, you can apply, and there will be a formal, anybody that applies for the planning committee must come before the membership and introduce themselves, and there will be an actual vote. Charles?
All right, so great, yeah, and the vote will be either in May or June. That's what we're looking at as our timeline. So please get your applications in, and we look forward to reestablishing our planning committee. And I'd like to thank all the members of the planning committee who've been doing a wonderful job in making sure that we do a good job for our community. Next slide. LJ?
Yeah, everyone, having some connection issues, so I'm going to keep my camera off. But it's LJ here. For some of you who don't know me, I'm the Environmental Policy and Advocacy Coordinator here at WEAC, and I deal with all the city policy work. This announcement is for anyone who's in District 10, that's Washington Heights, Inwood, and Marble Hill. Councilmember Council Member Carmen De La Rosa is looking to do some co-governance and creating a committee, an organizing committee with our members, and has multiple different kind of like subcommittees that you can join, and would like to develop a District 10 action plan. So if you're interested, really encourage all of you who are in District 10 to apply and join me and Sonal, who are going to be a part of the environmental and sanitation committees, and you can apply for those. I'm going to drop the link in the chat as well. And you can also send me an email if you have more questions. This is an application process, so you'd have to apply, and then with their office, and then you may be chosen. And so going to be working on this action plan. It's a really great opportunity to come in and work directly with the local official to kind of get some of the things done for your community and what you need. So again, I'm going to drop my email in the chat, and I'm also going to put the link to the application. So if you are interested, send me an email if you have any more questions. And yeah, so I'm going to do that now. Thanks, Charles.
Thank you, Lonnie. Okay, just moving on. We're almost closing.
Charles, do we want to give the results for the poll?
Yes, let's do that right now.
So everybody, if you participate in the poll, sharing the results, you should see the results. Let me make sure that people are seeing.
Yep.
Can anyone see the results?
Yes.
Okay, so those are the results. I have to, I'm double screening, so I can't see everything at the time. But so right now, Environmental Justice for All Act, 72% of people said that would be a policy they're most interested. For Justice 40 and the Climate and Economic Justice Screening Tool, 46%. Transportation regulations are at 37%. The power sector regulations, 29%. Lead service line replacement is 32%. Safer Beauty Bills package is 26%, and 9% of you have other. So that is the results from our poll. We thank you for participating in our poll. Thanks again to the federal policy team for putting all this together, and I'll turn it back over to Charles.
Okay.
Are you going to do the other 3 questions? Or should we?
We're missing other questions?
I
thought he just gave the answer to one of them, but there's 4 questions. I just didn't know if you were going to go over them.
But in terms, Charles, do you want me to go over all of them? Because I didn't think.
You can, and then we'll close the meeting right after you do that, since there was a question on the floor. So let's get that done.
Okay, so the second question, which of the following affects you and your community the most? 43% of you said lead in water. 23% of you said toxic home and beauty products. A whopping 37%, and this is what why we do the work, diesel pollution from transportation. And the fourth is smog and soot.
That was 67, not 37.
67% and smog and soot from nearby power plants is at 24%. Our third question,
They're losing you, Bailey. You with us?
Is 77% said yes, and 23% said no. And the last question is, would you be interested in participating in a workshop on climate and economic justice? 82% of you said yes. So thank you for that.
All right, is that the rest of the poll? Is that everything?
Somebody said they wanted a repeat of question 3. Do you think your community or neighborhood should be considered a disadvantaged community? 77% of you said yes, 23% of you said no.
Okay. All right.
I wanted to thank you guys for announcing the Cecil Fellowship. I'm really excited to see who you guys are going to pick. And y'all can create two new Cecils. So I think that was such a beautiful move by WEACT. I'm really excited for the future.
So on the last note, I just want to make sure you guys are aware of our candidate forums. They're going to start next month. We really need you guys to come out and support and understand who is running. Voting is power. And I'm sure if you guys, anybody needs a voter registration, let us know. If you need us to come to your community to register people to vote, that we can do that too. So make sure we get all that done. In saying that, I bid everyone adieu.
Charles, remind everybody to become a member.
Oh, thank you, Louis. If you haven't become a member yet, please become a member of WEAC. It's very important that you do. As you can see that with your support, we're able to get our senators and also representatives of our community to these meetings. I think one of the reasons why they know to come to our meetings is because you guys are strong supporters of what we do, and we believe in environmental justice. So we continue to do the right thing, and we continue to change our community to see how to make sure that we have what we want for us. All right, everyone. Yes.
Today was great. Thank you, guys.
Can you save the chat? I had to switch to my phone and I don't see how I
Yeah,
can
the chat
save
the chat is saved when I'm doing as we record. So the chat is saved.
Okay, you'll send it out. Can you send it out?
I don't know if we send it out, but if you have specific questions, we'll be happy to answer those.
Charles,
Yes,
how do we access today's video?
it will be on probably by no later than Tuesday or Monday of next week. Our communications person, Chris, will put it on our YouTube channel, and you guys can go to our YouTube channel and get that information.
And will they email us the YouTube channel?
I do not know, Chris. I don't know. I put you on the spot, but just go to our website and you look up for WEAC YouTube, and you should be able to find us. I don't think there's any other WEACs around in the country.
WEAC YouTube?
Pretty sure, but contact me if you can't find it. You know I'm available.
Thank you.
All right. All right, guys. Anybody else? Otherwise than that, have a great evening, and we will talk to you soon, or we'll see you in a couple of weeks or a couple of months, or maybe tomorrow. Who knows? All right.
Great job, WEAC. We love you guys.
Thank you very much.
Well, good to see you all.
Thank you, Charles.
You're welcome.
Charles, I was glad to get on the meeting and I was able to talk and say some things.
Not a problem, Mrs. Murphy. Not
Thanks a
problem.
lot. I like I said, talk some more, like during the week.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm
Okay,
sorry,
thanks a
sorry I
lot.
joined you late. I'm sorry. Had some tasks, but thank you so much.
It happens. Everyone, we appreciate you. You can go on with your day. Enjoy this rainy day. Have some tea and coffee.
Over there too.
Thank you, David. Nice seeing you.